click in.
Yeah, well, you're already in. Just start your video.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Can we do a sound check? Welcome to our live event. I'm very excited to welcome you from not so sunny Banstead in Surrey. Those of you that are here, can we get can you Skype in where you are, where you are dialing in from? Okay, just in the chat, if you could put a few comments in there, just so I know you can hear me. Let's just do a quick sound check. All right. Where are we dialing in from? All right. Sound is working. Great. Fantastic. Okay. From Banstead. Okay. Not so sunny Banstead. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Are we going? Where are we? Who else have we got on the line over here? Hi, Peter. Sound okay? Fantastic. Well, look, guys, thank you very much for joining us. I'm really excited to talk about and present one of my good friends and RTEs extraordinaire, Ben Golob. We've spent quite a lot of time in the past working through some really amazing, an amazing kind of adventure, really, Ben. So welcome and thank you very much for joining us on today's session. We're really excited to just pick your brains and get into the nuts and bolts of how you became a release train engineer, and just really learn and get some ideas and some guidance from yourself. So welcome to the live channel, and welcome to Safe in the Real World. And that's what we're about. We're about the real world practical implementation. And I promise you nothing less from my good friend over here, Ben. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. Nice to be here. Thanks very much.
Great, fantastic. So let's get started, right? So first of all, we can't do a virtual, so we'll just do an elbow shake, shall we? Yeah, there we go. I think that's the politically correct way of doing it. So okay, so Ben, why don't we start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got started on on this exciting journey.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Again, thanks very much for inviting me to this. It's great to be able to share my experiences. So I'll start at the beginning, really. Good place to start. So as far as I was, started off as a project coordinator a long time ago now, and worked on field deployments and network deployments for big telecoms companies, rolling out things like BT21CN network, in mid Wales and places, nice remote places like that. We then moved from, I then moved from doing that into more project deployment and project management, where there's a lot more about planning bigger waterfall rollouts, across Europe and the US. I did that for quite some time, actually, and it seemed to be the right thing to do for quite a long time, because Agile wasn't even on the horizon at that point. Then moved from...
What kind of years are we talking about, roughly?
So it's around about 2004 to 2009. Okay. So, for me, like I say, it was all about sequential rollouts of network infrastructures. Okay. And then from there, moved into pretty much with the same company still, moved into customer operations, a bit more account management, that sort of stuff. But it was still very much about deployments and managing those deployments. And then I did that for about 2 years, and then decided to step away from customer operations and go back to real deployment work. Is something I absolutely love doing. It's about that drive and that making sure that the things, the plans are proceeded and delivered on time, etc., and all that good sort of stuff. Okay, so that really takes me up to about 3 or 4 years ago. Okay, as far as PMing goes. So going from that, really, well, I've really, I think the point around that is just a bit more depth, and the experiences around the PM work. Sorry, it's just about there's so many deployments, and it was just like I say the right thing to do in that sequence of events, and it was making sure that a lot of infrastructure builds about putting the equipment in place, powering it up, firing it up. You have to do things in sequence, okay? And it seemed like that's all I knew, really. That's all I knew. And then it kept going for a long, long time like that. And I was working with many other colleagues, many other companies, all doing the same sort of thing. So that's what we knew, okay? And that's not to say that's a bad thing. It's just the way things were. And I've been lucky enough now to move into a different world, if you like. And yeah, it's been a nice transition into this new way of working, but I'll allude to a bit more of that in a second.
Sure.
Just have a quick break for a drink of water.
Sure. So whilst you're doing that, whilst you're having your sip of water or whatever, so just so everybody's clear on the starting point, before you became a release train engineer, so what were your qualifications at this point?
So I Prince 2. Okay, that was the main foundation. I think a lot of people have got that, but then also lots of life experience as well. But that was the main accreditation, Prince 2.
Okay,
practitioner.
nice.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, great,
yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. And so tell us a little bit about the transition. So at this point now, you'd been running, you'd be doing a lot of deployments, and now you are asked to become a release train engineer, or you became a release train engineer. Tell us a little bit about how did that transition start, and really what kind of made you decide to become an RTE?
Right. Okay. So this is another sort of slightly more interesting story. Okay. So I joined a particular company where I'd come in as a deployment project manager, and lots of coordination and lots of facilitating. And I'd moved to a different department within that same company, where quite honestly, becoming an RTE was just basically down to timing, should we say? Okay, but and that's a lot to do with the fact that the program that I moved into, okay, it started off quite small, and unbeknown to me, there was another agenda effectively to bring in Scrum and Agile and all that good stuff that I had no idea about. I didn't know anything about it. Okay, and I was just there to do some PM work. Some good old deployment stuff,
So you joined as a Waterfall Project Manager?
I did indeed, absolutely, yes. And it was head down. I'm continuing doing my job, my role as a Waterfall PM. Okay, it's all consuming. That's what you focus on, and that's what you deliver against. Okay.
Yeah.
So the program I joined, it quickly morphed into from being some PMs doing a delivery function to they recruited a lot more people. And they started to do this thing called SAFe. Okay, we all know and love this Scaled Agile, and it was
What kind of year are we talking about now?
Sorry, say again.
What kind of year are we talking about now?
So this is 3 years ago.
Okay.
So not that long ago, but it was So along that we had what was very, very useful in that situation. Again, I had no idea about Agile, okay, but it was about bringing, we had a coach, your good self, and we also had an RTE coach coming as well. And they really helped build the foundation and shape what we needed to do, who we needed to be, okay. There were several training courses, loads of sessions. There was the 2-day accreditation as well for safe training. The thing that I noticed the most, I think, about this whole situation was the teamwork and the collaboration that started to become very evident and the togetherness right at the very beginning, just the way that it was all structured. I hadn't really seen this before, certainly not at any scale, and it was actually quite addictive to see it. Okay, so after several sessions of coaching, and the Agile Release Train was coming together, lots of the safe roles were being formed and filled. Okay, your product manager, your product owner, scrum masters, and then the dev and tests. Okay, and being a waterfall project manager, I was thinking, where am I going to fit into all of this? Okay, I think that was a really quite a pivotal point, and I can distinctly remember.
You look at the safe picture and you go, "Oh my God, there's no project managers here.
Yes.
Oh no, I'm going to get fired."
Where am I going to fit in? Yeah, and I distinctly remember I had to buy your coffee to get some of your time, and we sat down and
guys,
talked about
for the
it,
record, you don't have to buy me coffee every time they wanted to speak to me. Just to put that make that absolutely clear. Sorry,
yeah.
please go ahead. Yeah.
No, and yeah, we sat down and we looked at the most obvious things, and the RT, the release train engineer role, was that. We did a bit more. We had a bit more explanation about it, a bit more background to what it is, and I could link it to my previous role as a delivery manager in a slightly different context, obviously, but ultimately it's still a delivery manager with slightly more empathy, I think is a very nice way to put it. Okay. Yeah, and that's really how it happened. And there weren't too many people on the program who were in that position. So most other people have been brought in to fill the product owner, the product manager functions, etc. So this was, whilst we had a contract RTE in, it was suggested that, because I was permanent at the time, a permanent role at the time, it was suggested that it would be a good fit, and I could learn from the contract RTE. And that's how the journey started. It really, I sort of fell into it, but it's just been the best thing I've done, to be fair, from a professional point of view.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
It really has. Yeah.
In terms of, just so people that are watching, they can get a good sense of, what are some of your traits, if you like, that you think, just led you up to, having almost a confidence to become an RTE. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of the skills that you actually had? Because I remember when you came to see me and you were like, "Oh, this is asking," and there was a little bit of nervousness around that, right? But I'd seen certain things and in yourself, which I'm happy to share in a little while. But I'd like to get your perspective from your point of view in terms of, what do you think were your strengths that you think that you had in the waterfall world, that you'd almost gleaned, as part of that role, that you were able to felt helped to prepare you for what this new role, the RTE role, actually demanded?
So I think, like I said, as I mentioned before, it was being able to link it back to something that I could relate to, or what I knew as a PM. Okay, and it was very much about, okay, there's certain skills. You look at the scope of what an RTE is, okay, and it's very much about keeping the train on the tracks. Excuse the pun, but it's about making sure, helping those guys, helping the teams continue to deliver. Okay, so it's all about delivery again, but it's in a slightly different, very different way. But it's ensuring that there's a plan. Okay, and delivering to that plan. It's obviously, we were talking about sprints as opposed to year-long, projects or longer. So it's much shorter. But the building blocks are still there. It's very much about that coordination, that planning, that drive to the timescales. These are all things that I found as a waterfall project manager lended themselves really easily to an RTE role. Okay. Yes, there are other things that you've had to adapt to, but the core competencies are still there. Okay, I think that foundation really has stepped me in good stead for becoming an RTE.
I mean, if you've got like a heavy background in deployment, right, and being able to now, even everybody watching, you'll be, it's fairly clear that effectively what happens is that is one of the key challenges we have, whether it's an agile project or a waterfall project, is that effectively we have that need to be able to release and deploy on a regular basis. And frequently that's an area where a lot of projects and programs really suffer from, right, or really struggle with, be those waterfall or agile projects. So I think that sounds like a very good kind of grounding, if you like, for that role. Tell me, was there anything that was like, this is just weird. Was there any of those moments that stick in your mind where you think, oh my God, this is really quite a shock to the system, something that you found a little bit strange?
So I don't think so. And the reason I say that is because we had your good self as the coach, okay, and outlining and underpinning the whole ethos, okay, the methodology was there. So it was that sounding board was always there. So that was a huge thing for me, okay, and for the rest of the team. I mean, I still talk about it now with different individuals, and they say having that foundation, that training makes a huge difference. So yes, of course, there's nuances and there's a few pitfalls that you come across, okay, but having the understanding, Scaled Agile website as well, actually, but also primarily having the coach there to guide you through this initially, and that sounding board was for me was huge, okay. So no, I mean, I'd already been, I already had the experience as part of the PM role and been able to shape things anyway. So it wasn't a huge jump. I think that's the important thing here. It's a different world. Yes, it is, but it's not as scary as it might seem.
And from my perspective, that particular program or release train, it was a bit of a treat for me because most of my, probably I'd say about 70-80% of the work that I do now is kind of after the event.
Mm-hmm.
The train's been launched. There's a there are a bunch of different problems you need to do. People have got bad habits, right? Like when you're learning how to drive, right? What's the thing they do? You have to do that thing with the steering wheel, right? So you don't do the crossing the hands and all that, right? And if you do that, then you're getting out of the bad habits really tricky, right? So from my perspective, finding having this, almost this blank slate, right, where you can actually go in, and then people are receptive, like you and so many others over there on the train. They're ready and willing to accept the the information rather than somebody that's got bad habits, and they're arguing, no, but it's more comfortable for me to be crossing my arms whilst I'm turning the steering wheel, right? As a silly metaphor, right? But that's how we are as human beings, right? Once we get into bad habits, then we kind of cling to them. So okay, that's very interesting. So before you started that, and there was that transition, and I remember us, having a few sessions around that. But what were some of did you have any main concerns around, the transition from Waterfall to Agile Release Train Engineer?
So obviously, you're leaving something that okay, and you've been doing it a long time, and you're fairly well versed in it. So change is always uncomfortable. Okay, I think that's the important thing to really establish here. But again, I iterate again, the fact having that foundation of training is absolutely huge. Okay, I think if anybody's decided to do this, then it's worthwhile don't just jump in and say you're an RTE. You've got to go spend the time and do the training, because it gives you that knowledge, it gives you that foundation of understanding what it's all about and how to tackle it. Because I was very much of the opinion that you should be able to just lend yourself to this new way of working. I'm experienced, I could be able to flex, but there are nuances and there's just things that you need to understand about the ceremonies, the setup of SAFe, which all sounds a bit daunting, but it's actually not. Okay, but it is worthwhile having that foundation. Okay, and having a coach if you can, if wherever you go, if that's possible, that's brilliant, because obviously it's invaluable. It's different. It is absolutely different. Okay, but there are major familiarities I've already mentioned. Okay, it is still a coordination, it's still a plan. Okay, although it's not a Gantt chart. Okay, so and I think the other thing for me, absolutely. But the other thing for me, I think, as the biggest thing I had to deal with, as you're probably well aware, and you did coach me through this as well at the time, was around facilitating the many ceremonies, and the biggest one being PI planning. Okay, not so bad now because it's all remote at the moment because of COVID, but I do remember my first big PI planning session. I think we had 125 people in the room, and that's, it's a lot to deal with, but it was very daunting. But preparation is absolutely key for that, and to support. So apart from that, that was one of the pitfalls, should we say? But once I got over
Fair
that
enough.
one, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, nothing major, because it's all there in front of you. You can learn it very easily. You don't learn it overnight, admittedly, but you definitely can learn it.
Good, good. So you mentioned a couple of things over there. I want to just bring you back slightly to the training bit. What specific training did you do, or now in your experience would you recommend to new people in taking on this role?
Okay, so absolutely, the 2-day. I think it's. Forgive me, I forget the name of the actual course. It's a 2-day Agile overview. Okay,
Okay, it's
it
the
gives
leading
you that.
safe. I think you want, or the
Thank
safe
you.
agile.
Yeah.
This one, yeah. Okay,
Yes,
so that's the
absolutely.
fun. Yeah.
And that, yes, it's a leading safe one actually, but it's absolutely fundamental to your foundation of knowledge, because it tells you about all the aspects of it. It's a lot to take in, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but that's the basis. Because once you establish that, because I'm terrible at reading myself, okay, and yes, it is on a website, and you can read a couple of words, and it doesn't always sink in, because you can't always relate to it. So I absolutely recommend that 2-day course, leading safe. It's really, really good.
It's the feedback I've got whenever I run that course is that my God, this is a lot of information, right? And then you have to do an exam as well, which is not necessarily trivial, right? So it's not
Yes,
one of
that's very
those
true.
kind of like one of those academic where you just need to go and it's not one of those, right? This is what I always tell my my attendees are like, guys, if you go in and you actually go, oh, it's just one of those, and you don't study afterwards, you're probably not going to pass, right? And a lot of it is application as well, which I have to say, hats off to Scaled Agile for putting together a meaningful, exam. So yeah, no, I take it. There's also an RTE. There's also an RTE course. Have you done that training or?
No, I haven't done that one because it just didn't seem to be fitting at the time, because I've been executing it since I've become an RTE. So I think that's a very valuable one to do as well. Again, that shapes it more. I've got quite a few colleagues have done that. It builds on your knowledge, sorry, and it allows you to really structure yourself a lot more for around an RTE execution. Okay. And then there's the SPC as well, which is also a very good course. Okay, but that just takes it to another level. But I think from a starting point of view, I mean, if you want to take it down a level as well, I mean, a really good place to go if people are looking to move from a waterfall project manager into an RTE, then the Scrum course, the Scrum Master's role as well, is a very good place to start, because ultimately an RTE is I've been described as an Uber Scrum Master several times as well. Okay, but it is, it's building on that Scrum Master role.
And I know we're talking on this call a lot about waterfall PM to release train engineer, but another path is, and the path that I'd even taken prior to when I was doing the coaching was, as became a Scrum Master, you become very experienced in that, and then you then take the next step up, which is the next natural progression is your release train engineer. I remember when we were discussing, there was a little bit of, dare I say, a little bit of anxiety from your end in terms of, okay, am I going to be able to do this? But I was actually more confident than yourself, if I may, because I could almost step back and have a look at you and see your skills, and I could see you were a very organized person, right? In terms of you're very structured, methodical, and organized, right? And I realized that, and I knew that, if you have those traits, right? If you have those that experience, those traits, those skills, if you like, then becoming a release train engineer is relatively. It's always a challenge, but it's relatively straightforward, right? You've kind of ticked a lot of the boxes that you actually need, and that was one of the things. But I think that one of the things that I'd also say for the viewers is that being really positive about your ability to learn and having that growth mindset is so important, right? Sure, you need the training, sure, you need the coaching. If you can get the coaching, fantastic, right? Because obviously it eases your journey, right? That's obvious, right? We all know that. If I need to learn swimming, it would be much nicer if I could have a swimming coach, right? Because it will ease my transition into that activity, and so it goes with you learning anything of real complexity. But I think that having that positivity, right, is so important, and belief in yourself that what, if I don't know something, I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna go. There are lots of great websites out there. There are lots of great channels out there that can actually help with you learning safe and learning agile. I will do the necessary homework and I will pick up the stuff. And one of the things that I see is that in today's kind of environment, in this pandemic environment, having that strong belief in yourself and confidence that you can learn something is even more important, right? But what's your
Definitely.
thoughts around
Yeah.
that? And if you could just give us some ideas
Yeah,
around.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think you've just touched on a point I was going to bring up later on, actually, but it is around self-drive as well. Absolutely. Okay, you've got to, we're all different, absolutely. Okay, but I think if you really want something, pick it up and run with it. Definitely taking the bull by the horns, as it were. You really want to do this thing, and I did, absolutely. And I saw an opportunity as part of this role, transferring from the PM role, and I'll be honest, I got a little bit stale as well in my old role. Okay, and it was a real opportunity. So I think that drive, that really helped me drive things forward. But yeah, I mean, pick it up, run with it, and give it as much as possible, as investment as you can, and you'll make it your own. Out the back of it, you will succeed.
You get what you put into it, isn't it? Exactly. Okay,
Yes.
which kind of segues nicely and neatly onto my next question. And by the way, guys, on the call, if anybody's got any questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll come to them as well. So if anybody's got any questions about release train engineer experience or anything around related to that, then please start adding in any questions. So from a career point of view, right? I'd like to get, how has it been for you? How has it helped you? And well, has it helped you, right? That's the first thing. You went from an established project manager, so that was a very established career as well, career path as well. And now you shifted over to a completely different career path, right? Really. And related, and yes, transferable skills, I would say, but a very definite departure from where you were before. So what's your experience been on that? What's the benefits that you have received from that transition?
No, good question. Okay. So I think for me, it's opened up, as you rightly said, it's opened up a whole new way of working. Okay. It's changed my way of thinking about delivery as well. So with the waterfall mindset, and there's nothing wrong with it at all, but it's very sequential. Okay, you're thinking about how you can deliver these things. I mean, building a house is a prime example. Okay, you've got to lay the foundation, you've got to do the bricks, etc., etc. Okay, whereas Agile lends itself to other things, absolutely, but it makes you think in a different way as well. Much shorter time frames. Okay. And not quite so structured in the planning. Okay, you don't have to have the nth detail planned. So again, that was a big change for me. And it's hard to let go initially of, as a PM, you wrap your hands around the whole plan. Okay, and that's what you build your existence on, effectively. So this is a lot more about allowing the teams, to be much more in control of what's happening. You put some guardrails in and you help them on the way. But I think importantly, though, I'm not an agile evangelist at all. I don't stand on my soapbox beating my agile drum at all. But yeah, but I believe in the methodology. Yeah. I think that's the important thing. Yeah. Okay, I've seen it working. I've been in different companies now, and it's been introduced into those different companies, and the companies have seen the results, the rapid results that it brings. Okay, and I think that's the big thing for me as well, just how fast results can be delivered and the changes that can be implemented. It's just brilliant. It's really good to see. It's quite infectious. It's brilliant to see it.
Sometimes I do share a sentiment, I have to say, because sometimes agile is oversold, and you see that quite a lot, right? It's like it's gonna it's gonna do everything. It's your silver bullet. It's gonna do everything. You're gonna come in the morning. It's gonna make the coffee. It's everything, right? It's perfect, right? So there is that tendency, and you have a lot of consultancies and others that you sort of like have ridden on the coattails of that, kind of overselling what Agile can actually do. So I share your I share your sentiments over there. Okay, we've got a question that's coming from Bonga Zuma. I hope I got that right. And so there's a question around, what does the career pathway look like? It says after, before RTE. I'm assuming it says before the RTE role, and then we can take in after the RTE role. So what would you say are the career pathways to go to an RTE to be successful? What are the steps to go? Let's take that element of the question first, shall we?
Is this in a transition from a PM or just from?
Generally, I mean, if I want to become an RT now, what are the general routes, would you say, to
Okay.
that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think you've touched on it. I sort of skipped a couple of steps, if you like, just through circumstance and timing, as I mentioned before. But I think if you're new to Agile as in total, then some studying, as you said before, some training. I think a Scrum Master would be a really good step in the right direction. Okay, and that's not a small thing to do either, because again, it's a new way of working. It's running. It's leading a team. Okay, it's not managing a team. It's leading a team. It's supporting that team. But then an RTE, you grow from having that single Scrum team to, so I ended up having 11 Scrum teams as part of one of the trains I was running. So it's a big step. So to have that that shape and understanding that methodology at that Scrum team level, for me, I think would be the perfect place to start. Okay, and then you grow into it, because there's a lot of people dependent on your steer as well when you become an RTE. Okay, there's a lot of coordination to be done. There's a lot of big ceremonies to be sorted out. So I think if you get, that would be my advice, is just to take the first step, understand the Scrum Master role, and then step up.
So, because I went through that myself, and my experience was that I was a Scrum Master for a number of years before I started my safe journey, if you like. And it takes a lot of, it's not just the theory, right? It's about inspiring your team. It's about getting them on board. It's about trying to get them all focused on the right, on the right thing. It's about working with so many stakeholders as well. And when you are like your example that you gave, you have 11 teams. You said, hey, I've been a Scrum Master too. I feel your pain. I understand your world. Then it becomes a little bit easier, if you like, to relate, to be able to relate to your team, and also for them to hopefully take on board and support you in the journey, I suppose, as well. Okay, so here, so Scrum Master is a good role. Obviously, we've already talked about the Waterfall Project Manager as a bridge onto this role as well. And let's talk a little bit about after the Release Train Engineer. So I'm a Release Train Engineer today, let's just say. What are my different avenues which I can actually branch to step up to yet the next level?
Ahmed, there is no level any higher. RTE.
It is the peak. It is the
It's a great question, and it's something I think about often. Actually, is whilst I absolutely really enjoy being an RTE, what is next? I think if you're in a permanent role in a company and you want to progress yourself, I think you've got to be looking down probably the Agile coach. Okay, that would be the next thing I'd probably think about doing, and that's a much broader role, as you well know, and it's about branching out into that. There's a step in to facilitate that is the SPC. Okay, that course that you can do to allow you to do that, and the RTE role does lend itself to it quite nicely. But it's I think that would be the next place to go. Would probably be a coach. And that's much broader.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, my own journey was that it was essentially my own journey was basically step one, developer, then team leader, then a Waterfall Project Manager, Prince 2 PMP, all of that stuff, then Scrum Master for years, and then Release Train Engineer for a number of years, and then Scaled Agile Coach, right? There's a number of other of my colleagues have gone this slightly different route, which is from a release train engineer became a solution train engineer. So one of my colleagues that I'm working with in the Netherlands, he now supports 3 agile release trains, 3 RTs. And he's basically the solution train engineer. So that's another way. Ask yourself, what is it you're passionate about, right? If it's you love delivery, right? If you love the delivery side of things, right? Then I would recommend you go down the STE, which is the Solution Train Engineer route. If you go to the Scaled Agile Framework and you look at and you look at the full picture, you'll actually see there's an STE role on there as well, which combines multiple Agile release trains together. Or if you go to our challenge safe in the real world, you'll see the roles. We've got the STE role over there as well. So you get an idea of that. So that's also an option over there.
Indeed.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
All right. And what is the biggest lesson, would you say, that you've learned as an RT? You're looking back now. What would you say is your biggest lesson that you've learned?
So I've got 3 effectively. And so it's not me as an individual or not me as the role particularly, but what works. So my role as the RTE is about facilitating and delivering program increments with teams, okay? But to be able to do that, there's a foundation that needs to be established, okay? And I firmly believe this, okay, that it's senior stakeholder management, okay, is one. Training of the team, and the team being understanding what it is they've got to do and how they've got to do it. And the willingness of individuals to build stuff, okay? I mean, it really is. Okay. And it's about everyone going on that journey and wanting to be able to do it. So that was one portion. I think communication is the key as well, okay? And I remember as a waterfall PM that I'd have a weekly project meeting. I'd bring people together for an hour or 2 maybe, and you'd get some information passed, some of it would be missed, etc. I think what I've really learned as an RTE is working much closer with teams, much closer with individuals, that having that regular communication is vital, okay, especially because of the short increments that you're working in, okay, and having a clear plan and letting people understand what it is and being part of that plan. And then lastly, the third major point was to listen to people, okay. At the end of the day, the teams are the experts, okay, they're the ones going to be doing the work, as it were, doing the development, and so they're the ones who are going to come back with the issues, the impediments, the problems. So it's listening to the team.
Yeah, and the one downside that I could see coming from a waterfall project management is that third element that you've just talked about, right? Because if you're coming from the mindset or the mental model is, I will tell you what to do, I know better, right? If you like, even though it's not actually said as such, but it's implied, right? Whether you look at PMP or Prince 2, whatever it is. And I think the mental the mindset is a different mindset. It's more of a facilitator mindset. It's more of a collaborator mindset, and that can be a challenge, right? Did you personally find that challenging, or did you find that not too onerous to shift from that sort of like, no, I will tell you what to do to let's work together and find out the best approach?
Yeah, I mean, from a personal perspective, no, I didn't find it particularly difficult, because I was lending myself to that way without realizing it. Okay, it's about I wasn't the plans were there, absolutely, but I was always about getting people to buy into the plans as well, as opposed to just pushing them out. So for me, that wasn't too bad. But I know that from a lot of other colleagues I've got, it doesn't necessarily, it's not the way it works, and that's no criticism, it's just the way it is, and that's the way it's established as part of the framework, as part of Prince 2, etc. So yeah. So for me, no, it wasn't a problem.
Okay, great. And one other thing I just want to touch on before we move on to our probably last question, is you talked about senior stakeholder management. Can you dig into that a little bit and just give us why do you raise that as one of your key 3 points over there? Can you talk us through that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, senior stakeholder management. So senior stakeholders, they hold the money for starters
Yeah,
to be able to facilitate these
damn.
things. Okay, yes, but they've got to buy into what you're doing as well, because it's a different way of working for starters. But ultimately, the business owners, okay, the product managers, they set out what it is they want. So they've got to believe in what you're trying to do, and you have to deliver on that commitment as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so having their involvement, having their regular input and feedback is absolutely vital. So, and the more they do that, the more they believe in it, the more they see the success of it, the more likely you are to be able to continue that journey of on the train. Okay,
absolutely.
so
yeah,
it's key for me.
Yeah, no, okay, thank you for that. I think that is a very valuable and important point. I think I come from a developer background, as I kind of said, and sometimes it's kind of, oh, management, just leave us alone. Let us just get on and do real work, But actually, you're right. They're paying the bills, right? So keeping them engaged and keeping them on board and making sure that that is the real world, right? That is the real world element. We've got a couple of questions coming over here. We'll just come to those quickly. But final question that I have for you before we go over to the channel questions that have come through. If anybody has any more questions, then please put them in the chat now. So my final question to you is, what advice would you give your younger self or someone else, right, who is thinking of making the transition to an RTE role, right? What would be your advice to that individual about how they should proceed, or whether indeed you should proceed? Yeah.
So that's a really good question, actually. The advice I'd give myself or anybody looking to make that transition. So as I mentioned it before, but change is daunting. It absolutely is. But if you're willing to jump in, give yourself a go, give it a try. It is daunting, but with good coach, right enthusiasm, and plenty of reading, you'll be well on your way. You really will. And it's actually quite exciting. I think because things happen quickly in Agile, well, particularly it's safe in the Scrum, it happens quickly. You have your sprints, and it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks of things that start to happen, and you see things being built and created. It's quite addictive, to be honest. It's hugely rewarding as well to see a highly productive team working together. Okay, and whilst they're self-managing, they still need that support and their guidance, and that's what my role is all about, helping facilitate that. And I think, yeah, I haven't looked back. It's been the best thing I've done from a career point of view.
Great,
It really is.
fantastic. Thanks for that, Ben. I have just a quick story as well. Thank you for that. That I think hopefully will reinforce what you've just said over there. Many years ago now, when I was looking for a role as a Scrum Master, I was speaking to a recruitment agent, and I was actually arguing with him, and I was like, "You don't understand. I'm perfect for this role." And he looked at my CV and he started laughing, right? And he's like, "No, actually, you don't understand." I said, "What?" And he's like, "I have over 100 applicants for this role, right? And after number 25, I stopped reading them. So I don't care." So what actually happened is that it becomes so commoditized at that point, that at that point, for me, that was the switch. I was like, this has become completely commoditized now, right? And I'm sure that will come, the time will come when the RT is in that similar role, but we're years away from that now. And so for me, it's been like a really both not just from a work point of view, but also from a financial point of view and a personal point of view. It's been a big, a mega jump in terms of what you can command and what you can actually, what your rates can command in the market as well, right? So I think that's also, I mean, we're keeping it real. I mean, that is important as well, right? Okay, so
Indeed.
And then looking towards the future, you can build, especially in kind of pandemic times, when you need to separate yourself out. You need to show that you are, you have got something special to offer. Okay, so Ben, is it okay if we go over to some of the questions? And just one
Yes,
question. I
absolutely.
think we'll
Yeah.
just wrap up with. I think we'll take one or two questions because I don't want to go too much over. We'll go maybe 1 or 2 minutes over, guys, if that's okay, but we won't go too far over. Okay, so how does one separate the lines in terms of roles and responsibilities? And so this is like considering the role of STE, how does one separate the lines in terms of roles and responsibility with the RTE role? So this is the RTE versus the STE role.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is very much about the structure of the business you're working in, okay, and whether they've set up full safe, large solution safe, portfolio safe, okay. And it's very much about that structure more than anything else. It's quite difficult for a company to scale so much to be able to actually have solutions in place, okay. It's going to be quite a big company. So how would you separate it from an RTE to an STE point of view? It's quite an easy differentiator, to be perfectly honest, and I've seen it in the present company I'm working with, and it's a lot more solution safe is a lot more about solution train engineer is a lot more about laying out the solutions and getting the agile release trains to deliver that functionality in the same way that you've got an agile release train and the scrum teams, okay. It is a level up, okay, but it's a lot more solution led, so there's not, you're farming the tasks out, shall we say. Okay.
It's just a different level of abstraction. If you think about it, like it's release train engineer relationship with the scrum masters, you have an STE relationship with the release train engineers, I suppose. Yeah, as you get higher up, like, dare I say it, the dependencies across trains are harder to manage and resolve and have greater impact, and they take longer to solve those things. But essentially, the crux of it is a fairly similar kind of Okay, let's just take one last question. How do you deal with issues of alignment if your team receives requirements from multiple teams that are not aligned with your PI calendar? So let me just read that again. How do you deal with issues of alignment if your team receives requirements from multiple teams that are not aligned with your PI calendar? Okay, did you get that?
Yes, I get the general gist of the question. Sure. So we have our PIs, we have our 12, 13-week cadences, okay, and we spend a long time, most of the current PI planning for the next PI, okay, and that's all about shaping the backlog, shaping the features, getting ready to plan and commit for the next increment, okay. So if a team is coming in with those requirements, in a well-established train, that work or that request would come in before the PI starts, okay, and you'd go through your usual analysis process through your demand funnel, for example, where you'd have your business value, your cost, your architectural scoring, etc., that we put against those things, and ultimately it boiled down to prioritization of what goes into that PI, okay, and that's the control mechanism, because you start with your PI planning and you finish the second day of PI planning with a well-formed scope and commitment from the team to deliver that over the next increment. And you have to be structured and you have to be quite rigorous with saying that if you've missed this boat, then you can go into the next PI. Generally speaking, if it's smaller things, you can possibly adapt, but again, that'll be down at the sprint level. But you can't just accept things in left, right, and center, because that'll upset the scope that you've already committed to deliver. So you've got to be quite strict with that.
And that's where your product manager would come in and help to that?
Yeah.
What's your...
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It could be product manager, but quite often be product owner, because they're the ones that own the sprints.
At the team level.
They own the backlogs.
Okay, yeah.
Yes,
And at the train
team
level,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
If it's bigger than that, it would come in via the product manager. And I have seen it, I've experienced it, where the product manager has actually asked to do a pivot halfway through the PI, and that was a business decision. And that's something it does ripple quite a lot, and it does upset the train, and it can take a whole sprint to adapt to that change. Okay, so it's not something that's recommended at all, but it happens. Okay, but it's just something that you have to deal with.
And Ben, I think we've seen this together, right? Everybody, if you've got like a popular train like the one that you were leading as an RTE, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants a piece of you, right? Basically.
Yes.
And you need to be able to really communicate really clearly when your PI planning starts in advance, and you need to give the windows which people need to provide any requests to you, and you need to, and here's the tough bit, you have to be prepared to say no to some people as well. So it's not like, it's not a mechanism to say, hey, we can give everybody everything that they want, right? And you have to be able to say no. And I think that's also that is also the challenge. Any parting
that's very
words?
true. Very true. Yeah.
Any parting words, Ben, before we close the call?
I'm just thinking about the if anybody's willing to jump in, I think just absolutely give it a try. Go for it. It's a brilliant career. I've really enjoyed it, and it's different. Every single PI is different. It's different challenges.
Isn't it just?
Yes, absolutely. It's great, but it's a brilliant way of working. I thoroughly recommend it.
Great. Look, guys, thank you very much for attending and for your participation as well. I hope you found it useful. Thank you, Ben, for all of your insights. Guys, if you liked all of the stuff that Ben talked about, I certainly learned, even though I've worked with you for so long, I certainly learned a lot from you. Thank you very much, Ben, for coming. Guys, like this video if you found what Ben had to say quite useful, and also join the Safe in the Real World channel. And also, if you wish to subscribe to the newsletter, please do so. They're all in the links below. Till I see you again, thank you very much. Stay safe, stay very positive as well. And there's a lot of opportunities for those that can manage their mindset is my final parting message. Have a great evening, and thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, guys. Let's just do I think that's all right. Take care. See you, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.